Welcome to the BMX News Announcers Tower podcast. I'm Mike Carruth. In spite of all the bizarre things happening in the world, 2020 is turning out to be a rad summer. Fans of the 1986 cult classic BMX film are having a great time enjoying the 4K restoration Blu-ray that was released in the spring, and late last week, the curtain went up on a special edition streaming release on altavad.com. That special edition includes interviews with key players in the production, including our guest today. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the show screenwriter Sam Bernard, who co-wrote the RAD script and was one of the producers. Sam, welcome, and thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so where are you in the world right now?
I'm in Southern California, where I've lived for a long time, after I was originally from New York City.
Okay, cool. And so being in Southern California, BMX all around still. And so, we're definitely stoked to ask you a lot about the development of the project and just kind of going through the steps. But first of all, though, I mean, RAD was kind of in a deep freeze for a few decades after the theatrical release, and then the time when it was in VHS and Laserdisc only, and we had some glimmers.
It was.
Yeah, we had some little blinks on the radar when YouTube came around, and there was some bootlegs up there, and then that was the only option some of us had, and then on to the moment of triumph with this Blu-ray release and streaming release here in 2020. So during that time, where that dark ages, so to speak, were you aware of the deep love and connection that the BMX community had with the film?
Yes, I was. I've been following it on social media since social media became a thing to follow.
And so, as a writer, obviously, your story and the whole story was very close to you. And so, what does it mean to have your baby have that kind of a connection and mean so much to such a broad audience?
It's always been amazing. It's really an amazing situation. Also, obviously, for reasons that you mentioned, probably one of the most frustrating threads of my life. Always there, always in the background. Being asked about it constantly, having a career in the movie business, and working a lot with the guy who was the producer of the film, Robert Levy, and we were always constantly being asked about it, and it was very frustrating because there were very authentic and real reasons why I couldn't move forward, and people would ask, "Did you guys forget about it?" I mean, it was kind of silly questions. What happened? Why people forgetting about this movie? No one forgot about it. Trust me.
Yeah, and this was something that I didn't get a chance to really talk about in my interview a couple weeks back with Talia Shire and Robert Schwartzman. Was just that kind of the talk around the BMX campfire was that they didn't like this movie because it was, it lost money at the box office. I don't know what it did, after that, but I mean. And it came to light just through that interview that was absolutely not the case.
That's a silly presumption when you think about it.
I think just people don't understand Hollywood, and they think that it's just all about the dollars, and like I said, she set that straight.
If it is all about the dollars, why wouldn't they want to exploit something that obviously has the potential for more life?
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
It just doesn't make any sense. I've heard it for years.
So you've heard that too?
Same things for years. I've heard petitions. I've heard Talia Shire being burnt at the stake for being a witch, and and none of it was true. Talia Shire would have loved for this movie to come out, and both make money and be exposed because she really enjoys the movie, and she's proud of having had a part in being one of the people who along with her husband,
sure,
who wrote the checks. They wrote the checks for the movies.
Right. Right.
It makes no sense to me. I think people have this this perception that movie stars or whatever are so rich that The truth of the matter is, it was a very tough time for the Schwartzmans. They made three films, and two of them got really tangled up in legal situations, and then the third, which was RAD, got kind of caught in that, and we were always the wayward stepchild because we were the cheapest movie. Got dragged into the muck.
Interesting. Well, yeah, and like I said,
I spent lots of time with both Talia and Robert Levy, and this is after Jack died. Jack dying had a big part of doing it because he was a genius deal maker. He really was, and the way he put together these movies was pretty amazing. Kind of a pioneer in patchworking rights out for financing. He was very smart in the way he did it, but sometimes things don't always hit a smooth road,
Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah. Well,
I want to write a book one day about the whole RAD thing, about why it took so long, and the wild rumors out there. It's just crazy. It really is crazy, and it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah,
why would anyone want to? Why would these people? Why would the people who benefit most be the people who were stopping?
That's a good point. Very good point. So, what prompted you to write this story in the first place? Like, did you have any exposure to BMX in your younger days, or was it just something that you took a liking to in terms of a subject matter?
I had no idea about BMX, what it was, and anything about BMX. When I woke up, whatever the day was, I woke up back in around 1984, 83. I had no idea what it was, that it existed, that there was anything close to it. And I was, for some reason, I lived in Hollywood at the time, but I was on the west side, and I was driving by a park on Olympic Boulevard called Memorial Park, which our mutual friend Tony Donaldson had to remind me of, because there's some rumors. There's a bunch of different stories that get around. I'm always fascinated to hear the different ones. I'm pretty sure I've always told the same one, but other people have some wild ideas. I literally was driving by and saw some guys, hitting air, and on some crude equipment and some bikes in Santa Monica, and I just said, "Whoa, what is that? What the hell is that?" These guys were flying in the air under a hedge, right? They would come up over this hedge, and I'd see, wow,
Yeah.
It looked so amazing, and I was maybe 23, years old, and so I stop and I park and I go over and try to talk to them, and they really don't talk to me too much because they were really interested in what they were doing, and they didn't really want to be bothered by someone, they're focused. And I try to talk to them. They didn't give me very much, but I watched them, and I just was like really blown away.
Sure.
They're doing this stuff against these walls. It was all freestyling, and I didn't know the difference between freestyling or BMX or anything like that.
And so at some point you became aware that there was a racing component and a freestyle component, and then what was the...
So well, since they don't tell me anything. Now, at the time, Geoffrey Edwards and I we had the beginnings of a screenwriting career. We were in the middle of writing a screenplay for Warner Brothers. Totally different, but a teen movie. I had just finished on my own writing a movie that was called 315 that was gonna be released the next year. So there was, we had an agent, and we had a lot of, a lot of promise there, and we needed a new project.
Hmm.
And we didn't know that this was necessarily going to be it, but it was, and it turned out to be. And I stopped at a bicycle shop on Robertson Boulevard after seeing these kids, and I asked the guy behind the desk, "What was that?" He knew exactly what it was.
Hmm.
It's these kids. It's freestyling. They use BMX bicycles, and there's, and he gave me a magazine, which again Tony tells me, I don't remember what it was. I think the one I remember looking at the most later on was BMX Plus, but I think this was BMX Action, and I bought it, took it home, showed it to Robert Levy, who had done Smokey and the Bandit. I was living in his guest house at the time.
Ah, see, now there you go. That's that fate that happens sometimes, that where you just happen to be in the right place,
Yeah, because I knew who he knew.
Right, of course. That's awesome.
So I'm, saying, do this to Hal Needham.
Huh.
Let's talk to Hal Needham about this. And I don't think he had spoken to Hal Needham in a couple of years. Something happens when there's a successful motion picture made, and I think people all kind of go their different ways. I mean, but they had been friends for a long time. They had worked on movies together for a long time, and I don't know. A few days later, we're in Hal Needham's office.
Ah.
I'm meeting the great man himself, and he was like, he said, and I know this is like the third time I've told this story, but he said exactly his reasoning was, I don't think so, because I like to film cars going fast, and I like to blow shit up. And I don't see how this bicycle stuff has anything to do with what I do. And I said, well, Hal, it's all wheels in motion. So why don't you at least look at it live? And Robert Levy had then found out that there was going to be an exhibition at the Equestrian Center, and told Hal that he had already bought tickets for it. And so we go to that a couple of days later, and Hal's there, I'm there, Geoffrey's there, Robert's there, we're watching. My understanding is that it was Woody Itzen and Martin Aparicio who were there. I'm not sure about that, but that's what I hear, and so I trust it. And I know both those guys would have been the ones you would want there in order to impress someone.
For sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I don't remember them, that those are the guys, but I've spoken to Woody on the phone, and I know Martin quite well. So they were there, and Hal was watching them, and he turns to me, nods his head, and basically saying, "You're right. Let's make a movie."
Wow. That's so exciting as to how that actually happens. And then, so you get the nod from Hal Needham, and then now it's on you. And then Geoffrey came into it.
Yeah. I mean, Geoffrey came into it a little late in the game, but not. I mean, we always knew he was going to be doing it, but he had something else he was doing. With his father, who was Blake Edwards, and there was another project that he was working on over there. I had worked there too, and we had split off. We had split off from his father at this, but Geoffrey had finished something over there, so I started the script, and I actually wrote the I wrote the paper route pretty much myself, and then I really didn't have a story to go to. I mean, there was like, okay, I mean, and it turned out really great. I loved doing the paper route, wrote it to the song "Jump" by Van Halen,
Yeah.
and really enjoyed doing it. Bicycles, somewhere along the line, it came in my psyche that bicycles are a huge part of the human experience.
Yes, they are.
And when you first ride a bicycle, you're extending your world. You're you've got freedom for a real freedom for maybe the first time, where you can travel and get beyond and go someplace. I mean, it's a big deal that no one really is aware of until maybe much later in life, and I
Right.
certainly was. But I did know that I had moved from New York City as a kid to Los Angeles and never learned to ride a bike in New York because there really wasn't going to get permission. We were on the Upper West Side. It was hilly, concrete, and dangerous. And so,
Uh-huh.
as a little kid, I wasn't ever given permission to do anything like that. So really had to wait until I was in Southern California in order to learn how to ride a bike. So maybe I was a little older. Maybe I was 9 years old, and I do remember that sense of liberty, of freedom. I can now go a lot further than I ever have on my own.
Right. Right.
And I think that has become an integral part on why RAD has, I think, sustained. Because I mean, there were other bicycle movies, but somehow, again, it wasn't deliberate. I wish I could say I had that wisdom. It would have been nice. It would be nice to say, "Oh, I have the wisdom. I understand that." But that became clear to me over the years, and then in talking to guys like Tony and Eddie Fiola and Martin, I think having become professional bicycle riders, they had a better understanding of it.
Sure.
And so when I would bring it up to them, they completely. I remember being at Eddie's house and talking to him about it, and him. I just remember him sitting there nodding his head, going, "Yeah, buddy, you got it." And it was like, and this was years later. Um, so
So
I think I was.
you had never seen a BMX race at that point, at the point that Hal Needham gives you the nod. And so, was there a point that you actually went to see a race? Because I mean, obviously, racing, was the central theme of the movie, really, to some extent. And so, not freestyle necessarily, though there were a lot of freestyle components and tricks being done. In a way that wasn't really happening too much, where racers were doing freestyle tricks and that kind of thing. So that was kind of an interesting component to the movie.
Well, I think it's a good thing we didn't, because if we did and we wanted to be pure, then we would never have tried to combine them.
Yeah, 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 right.
I think our own naivety helped us out there, because you know I mean, Hal needed a frame in what to do. You needed a climax, and especially if it's a Hal Needham film, you need some sort of you need that frame of competition or and victory, and that's really important. So we just went with it, that there's going to be a race, and the racers are going to do all kinds of these tricks that we see people doing,
Yeah,
and we didn't really have a label for them, until to be honest with you, until we started shooting, we didn't have much BMX experience on the team,
right.
and until we started shooting and they came aboard, we didn't know. I mean, honestly, it was like we're coming in. We had heard that there was an Australian movie coming out called BMX Bandits, and we didn't want to watch it at that time because we didn't want it to be the same. And then we kind of heard. I mean, the one thing about RAD was we wanted to keep the storyline very pure to BMX. We didn't want it to be about thieves trying to get away, or using BMX as some kind of tool for another kind of a plot. We wanted it to be strictly BMX centric,
Yeah,
you
right.
know, or racing centric, whatever you want to call it. and we called it all of that.
So,
And
so was there a lot? Were there times once that the BMX guys came on board that they said, came to you or someone else in the production and said, hey, this is a little beyond what reality is for our thing. I mean, Hell Track was so different and so beyond what our thing was at the time, anyway. And I've definitely got some questions for you about that aspect of it. But first, just as far as the story, was there any pushback from the BMX guys that said, this is really kind of how it is?
no, not really, but they were so helpful in one situation, which is a highlight in the movie. So there's no way at that time, before we knew about about the writers, that a backflip
Mm,
could have been written into that script. We had no clue that it could be done, or even sort of conceive it beyond maybe a circus
right.
show.
Yeah.
Um, and it wasn't even in our radar, and it certainly wasn't in the original script. And once we started to crew up, and we started to meet some of the guys, and it was either Eddie or Pat Romano, probably Pat Romano, I think, who said there was this one guy that can do an actual backflip.
Yeah.
And Hal Needham said, "Get the out of here." And Pat Romano arranged in the parking lot in Burbank at Hal's office for Jose Inez. He came out and he did a backflip. Hal said, "Right there, I'll give you X amount of dollars if you do this for us. We need it 5 times and whatever." And Jose said, "Sure,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll do it." And
Definitely.
and so then we had to write that in, and we had to figure out how to write that in, and it was a perfect moment because it's what gives our character crew the edge in the movie, and it was so ideal and perfect, worked out so well,
Sure.
and it was educational for us. I mean, we didn't know, I mean, no clue, and we didn't, and then we started to learn about the difference between freestyling and BMX, and Hal said, "We don't care, we're going to do it all. We're doing a bicycle race. It's going to be like it's going to be like a roller derby." I
Yeah.
mean, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do it all, and we're gonna put it all together, and you call it whatever the hell you want. That's what he would say, and I think at the time it was fine because only only the real aficionados knew the difference.
Yeah. 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 Right. Right. For sure.
Who knew? And maybe we were creating something special. That wasn't the intent. The intent was to make it as exciting and film friendly as possible. And to be honest with you, how do you do that without combining both of those disciplines?
Yeah. No. Absolutely. It worked
I
out
think
well.
so.
Needless to say.
It was a big. I had a big education. I mean, the whole question started out of BMX. Did I know? I had no clue. I really had no clue about anything until. And again, we were talking about 1985. There was no internet to go find it.
Right. No. Absolutely.
All you can do is look at BMX Plus and BMX Action and talk to these guys. Hope they're telling you some piece of the truth, and
Drive down
and
Olympic Boulevard.
and exactly and learn as you go. And there was also figures that we found out about that that as supposedly the year before that 7 million BMX bicycles were sold in the United States, and wow, what a number.
Yeah. Those were the
um,
days.
that's a huge number of bicycles being
Yeah.
sold.
So
And
were you
yeah,
with the name Hell Track in the movie? Was there any pushback by censors or MPAA or anybody that would in terms of that word being used? Like sometimes just throughout film history, you hear about words that get kind of bad feedback from people.
Not that I remember. There was a little bit of internal discussion about whether we wanted to do a G movie or a PG movie,
Okay.
and the original script was a little, it had a little more of an edge to it. It was a little darker and should have been aimed towards more of the teenage group, and that's what it was intended for. But when the financiers came on board, they wanted to really do it much more family oriented. So it was a little bit of a quandary, I think. And I think the studio who was marketing the movie wanted, stuck with marketing the teen movie, where we then went ahead and wrote the family movie and rewrote the script of the family movie. So I think somewhere in the marketing got screwed up. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's one of the reasons I think that it didn't do incredibly well when it first was released. I think there was a kind of a there's a definite difference on how to market a film when you're going from teens to to preteens.
Right. And what did it come? Did it come out as a G or a PG or what?
In my opinion,
What did it get? What was the release rating then?
the release was PG.
Okay. Yep.
And I think I think our original script was a PG script, but I think the movie was a G movie, except for a couple of Wesley saying bullshit.
Ah. Yeah. Yeah.
Other than that, I think it's a G movie, and it should have been marketed that way.
Right.
But that wasn't up to me.
So this being an original screenplay, there was no novel from which from which actors could draw inspiration or depth of character or something like that. And one side, in that says that they like to use, actors like to use the book if there is one to, for cues into deeper character facets. And then the flip side says that they never ever read the book and prefer to shape the character on their own. So did any of the actors come to you for cues on how their character would handle a given scene?
I mean, RAD was pretty much one-dimensional character.
Yeah.
Which is fine for that, a fast food movie, which is what it was. I mean, it was, you're not, it wasn't supposed to give you a lot of thoughts about the people. It's like, get in there, enjoy the fast pace. This, crazy kids on bicycles, and make it, and keep it at a watchable length, and get them out there and get the next group in.
And what was the final running time? Was it like 192 minutes or something like that?
No, it was much less than that. I think.
Or 92? Was it, what? Tell me.
Yeah. It was a little under, or just a little over an hour and a half.
Yeah,
I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. 192 would be like Schindler's List or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't. I mean, if anything was, the character of Crew changed quite a bit, because that character had a different arc in the original screenplay, and there in mine and Geoffrey's original screenplay there wasn't the SAT thread.
Mm-hmm.
That story was not included. It was more about he was a kid who didn't want to graduate high school because he didn't want to go out into the world. So he would do his homework and deliberately fail and do it really bad, and his sister would see him and go, "Oh, that's not right," and without him knowing it, she would then go and do the right answers. And it was Crew doing everything he can to be, to not want to move on, fearful of moving on in life, which I think was a really big, kind of an overarching theme of people in those days, and maybe still is.
Yeah.
And I think that was going to make it really human. But it was decided that they wanted to make him I guess archless. He just needed to be the perfect kid from the beginning. So that's what we did.
Got it. So of all the cast's roles and the roles that they played, um, were there, once the movie was final and you actually were in the saw the final cut, were there any was there any aspect of a given performance which had you saying, it's not the way I intended it when we wrote it, but not bad. I mean, it's actually good. It's different.
Sort of fell in love with it along the way. It's like you come in. I really can't say that I mean, there were some in the beginning. There was a couple of things casting I would have done different, but I think in the end, I started to I was there shooting the movies. It was part of it, and
Right.
and we you just fall in love with the characters as you, even if in the beginning I didn't agree with the way it was going to go. I did as it was being shot.
Mm.
I mean, it was a magical shoot as well.
I'll bet. I mean, I was at BMX Plus at the time of the shoot and of the premiere, and so we in our editorial office got, we weren't as close to it as BMX Action was, obviously, because they were very close to it. And RL was was in the movie at some point in the opening credits and so forth. But we heard we heard a lot about it, and it was like definitely that magical shoot aspect sounded very appealing.
Well, I got to attribute that to the director, Hal Needham. He really put that sense of fun and that sense of he's the kind of guy you just want to please.
Sure.
He's just a very charismatic guy, and he did a lot for the film. He brought this aspect. He really did. He brought so much to the film externally, such as all the products and all the sponsorships and all that. And he worked really hard. And I think that he also understood that this is a movie for young people, and he had never done that before.
Mm.
And part of that was why I actually came on board as one of the producers, is because I was the youngest one associated with the movie, and he really wanted that input there. And he was very good. He would ask about, would kids do this, kids do that, and I don't know. I don't. First of all, I'm older than a kid now, and I don't speak for kids, but I understood what he meant, and we helped him along as much as possible, because he doesn't have kids, or I think he does, but I don't think he hadn't had kids. They were for a while, and so he wanted to know what would work to today's kids, and he came up with the whole. I mean, we knew we had a race in the movie, and it was going to be a big, crazy, insane race. But he actually came up with and designed the final race of Hell Track.
Mm. And that starting hill, that really, the vertical start, no gate, with a flag start, that was his doing?
It was all his doing. I mean, he was a NASCAR owner.
Right.
He owned the Skull Bandit car, 33 Harry Gant. Huh. And that's where 33 comes from.
Oh, cool! I had no idea. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, with the with the shoot and with things that that happen there, and what is the role that the producer or any member of the production can actually do to ask or give input to the director? Is that something that can be done?
Oh, in my case, because I was also the writer.
Right.
And that was one of the reasons he wanted. I mean, it was such an honor to be working with the guy. He was a giant in the industry. He's incredibly likable. and he knew how to get stuff from you. I mean, he was a very confident person, and so from my aspect, yes, more particularly from the script point of view, and if we needed to do improv and write some lines really quick, he and I would sit there and do it,
Right.
and it was a pleasure. It was really an honor. It was a pleasure. I loved working with the guy.
That's awesome.
I think I got spoiled for it was really my first film. I
Yeah.
mean, I had worked on films before, but this was really the first one where I had a real integral part in it. So I was spoiled that, oh, okay, so I had this. This is how a great director works. They include you out, and you find out otherwise later on. most 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 directors don't want to write her around because they wanted to make it their own. This guy was like, no, I need your help.
Oh,
I wanted to, so it was, he was great.
that's awesome. So RAD fans have been always clamoring for a RAD 2, give us a
Hmm.
baby brother kind of thing, somehow, some way. What are your thoughts about that? Whether it's possible, financially, otherwise, but I mean, like, have you thought about it over the years, what that story might look like?
I've thought about it a million times. you know? And I think there will be one.
Yeah?
I think I kind of gotta leave it at that. I mean, we've been discussing it quite a bit.
Oh, wow, that's
You know,
awesome. That's great to hear.
internally. I think there's more rad in more than one form coming down the pike. We got a little stymied, as everyone did with COVID, because we were ready to reintroduce rad to the world through South by Southwest,
Right.
and then we were going to go out this spring in 6 cities as a theatrical release. We had 6 cities booked with with a theater chain called Alamo Draft House, and which is a hip sort of beer-driven, fun kind of a place to see a movie. And they're in L.A. and they're in New York and I mean Austin, and we were ready and we had it all planned out, and that was part of that was part of the program to reintroduce RAD to the public, expand on its already burgeoning and explosive base, and do it methodically, not rush into anything, and come up with the and either come up with some platform to do a rad reboot. And so, had that happened, had we not been stymied by the COVID, we would probably be already into that. But Robert Schwartzman has a very specific idea on what he wants to do and how he wants to handle this, and he's in close touch with me, and we've discussed it quite a bit. And I feel he's a very smart guy. This is his this is his father's legacy,
Right.
and he was 3 years old when the movie was made, and but this is his father died when he was quite young, and I think that he's become a very very desired filmmaker in his own right. He's made now 3 movies on his own as a director, and he knows the business really well, especially the new form of the business, which is nothing like very very unsimilar to like when I was making a lot of movies back in the '90s and the early 2000s, and it was nothing like it's done today.
Is that right? Okay,
And
interesting.
yeah, it's all very different. I don't recognize it. And I mean, you have to do a lot of different stuff, like what he was doing, like taking an old cult classic like Rad and restoring it into its best form, showing it at a introducing it at a venue like the South by Southwest, and and then moving on and taking it step by step and build it, and that's what he's doing. And I think he's doing a hell of a job. I really do.
That's awesome. So, as we close out the segment, is there anything you'd like to say to RAD fans everywhere and BMX News Announcers Tower listeners in particular? Is there anything you'd like to tell them or for them to
Well,
know?
I just like to thank them for keeping it alive. I mean, it's really about the fans at this point. Um, it would, I mean, it would, it's a phenomenon. I mean, it wasn't so. It took years for it to really come back, and once it did, all these people started coming. I mean, we knew it sold incredibly well on VHS, so there was some nerve that it hit, but it didn't hit at the box office.
Right.
So it was kind of like thought to be, well, it didn't hit, but it was definitely in the top rotation is what for rentals back in the late 80s and early 90s, and it stayed there for, I mean, I think it stayed there for years, which was incredible. And there was even talk early then of pressing more, and getting the DVD ready, but there were so many internal problems with the rights, given that it was peeled off, that it, I just need to thank the fans for their patience. I think that's the best I can do, because they hung in there.
Right.
And even through a lot of copyright infringements and violations of copyrights, which has been done over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And people will try and justify it by saying, well, no one there, you guys all forgot about it. No, that's not true. It's like, what you're doing is illegal, and if we had done it, it would have been illegal.
Uh-huh.
We had rights issues with financing entities, and it was very difficult to clear up, and no one wanted to be sued.
Right.
We didn't want to be sued, and so that was what the holdup is. So I really think that the fans have kept this alive. It's just amazing how they and how it's grown, and how there are even there's even a huge piece of the fan base that wasn't even born
Yes.
when it first out.
Right.
And now they're being and all they were able to see was some grainy old VHS and some pirated DVDs, and now they get to see it in all its glory, which it looks wonderful. The restoration is beautiful. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it yet.
No, just the trailer. That's it. Because the DVDs, the DVD set sold out before I got there. So
It sure did. It sure did.
Yeah.
Well, I think there might be more coming down the pike.
Oh, good. Because I'm definitely in on that. Well, it's been a fascinating discussion. I really appreciate you giving us
Thanks
all the
for having
time.
me, Mike.
Yeah, and so it really was a special treat to kind of get the behind the scenes look from the writer. I mean, because obviously a lot of the attention is focused on the actors and that layer of the production, but from the writer's point of view and just what you're thinking and your motivations were, that was really awesome to hear. It just means so much to us to have that.
Oh, you're welcome, and I thank Tony too.
Yes, indeed, Tony Donaldson.
Tony Donaldson.
Yeah, my former colleague at BMX Plus magazine, still there at High Torque to this day. So that's awesome. Great place to work that is, and it's also really awesome to see him just being part of it. And you were part of the running commentary that he did a few years back, right?
Yeah, that was a wonderful time, and I hadn't seen some of those guys in years. That was just a fantastic. It was a really inventive, creative format.
Yeah.
Where 4 or 5 of us sat around and watched the movie and talked about each scene, and we'd stop and go, and it was great. That was a lot of fun to do that, and it was great to see the guys. I think it was myself, Bill, who I'm still really good friends with, and Jose Yanez was there, Eddie Fiola, Martin,
Right,
Jeremy Mosier, and I think that's it.
right on. And so that show that audio track is still available on iTunes, and we've linked that on the bottom of the article that contains this podcast. So to the listener,
Oh, cool.
you can go and find that.
Right, and it's not only on that, but it's on the DVD.
Oh, it is.
I mean, the Blu-ray, yeah,
Okay.
as an extra.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
they liked it, and so Tony had that. It's great. I mean, people love that. People who hear it love it because it's so much fun. And Bart Connor is there, and so there's like 6 or 7 of us, I guess, and we're just riffing on the movie as it's playing, and it's all audio. It's not visual, and it works really well.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
How did you come
it's
up with the name? Now I know we were signing it off, but there's always one more thing. So
That's
how did
okay.
you come up with the name? Like the name Crew Jones. Where did that come from?
I mean, it just came out of a lot. I was asking on another podcast something similar, like where'd you come up with the line "Let's walk this sucker," and what does it mean? I don't know what it means, but it sounded good, and we probably wrote down like 200 phrases, and we probably wrote down 100 names, and just different names and different derivatives of action and that kind of thing. And we just come. I mean, we knew it was going to be the Joneses. We wanted the last name to be really simple, so we knew it was going to be the Joneses, and it was just writing all that stuff down and thinking of derivatives, and we just sat there for probably a couple of days and came up with the name Crew,
Huh.
and with the U as opposed to the EW.
Yeah, right. That's
um,
that's awesome.
yeah, and really it was Talia Shire who actually gave him his real name, because we never said his name was Christopher, and she does call him Christopher
Huh.
in the movie. Uh, but we didn't, that didn't come from us. But she felt that she wouldn't be, that's a nickname given to him probably by his friends from a very young age, maybe even by his wayward father,
Uh-huh.
or and that's not a name she would use, which was a good differentiator,
You
I
bet.
thought. I thought so, but she didn't ever come to me and say, "Well, what's his?" She might have, and I would probably look at her like, "I don't know." Oh my God, you know. Uh, and so she actually came up with the name Christopher. So he's he's really in real life, in the movie world, he's really Christopher quote Crew unquote Jones.
Ah, very cool. Well, as things continue to unfold and to reemerge and change and shift shape, we hope that you'll join us again sometime to
I'd
catch
love to.
up.
This is
Yeah,
great.
that would be awesome, and hopefully we'll see you, maybe at one of the future RAD related events.
Yeah, well, there's going to be a lot. I mean, unfortunately, again, we got like everyone else. We got sucker punched
Sure.
by this damn virus, and I probably no one was more disappointed than myself and Bill when the South by Southwest. I mean, that's a dream, and
Sure.
I've been involved with, I've made 12 movies. I've been involved with another 10 in some way or another, and to have a film, especially one of your first and most dear films, to reopen at a place like South by Southwest was so exciting. And once I saw all these other firms dropping out, the writing was on the wall. It was just a horrible feeling,
Yeah.
and it's And it was very disappointing. I wish it had happened. I think it would have been such a great way to reintroduce RAD to the world. Um, and we were going to do a Q&A, I think, and have a party and just have a lot of fun. And, it wasn't going to be in any kind of a competition because it was already a made movie. And we didn't really want it to compete with all the crazy art films that are out there for South by Southwest.
Yeah, yeah, right.
You know, um, you never have, but I don't know how Schwartzman did it, but he's a determined kid, and he got it out there, and he even said to me, look, it's always possible we could go back in another way next year, so maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
It would be great. That was an exciting. I mean, what a way to reintroduce this movie. And the movie already, had. I mean, people name their kids Crew Jones all the time.
Yeah, I'll bet you're right. Yeah, yeah.
They do. They do. We get it. I mean, I get. Listen, even I, as not the most, obviously everyone wants to talk to Bill. He's Crew, and they love him, and he's, in his book and everything. But and Bart Connor was, but I wasn't on, but I get approached a lot, about, oh, what's this, and can I get a, some sort of, validation from you, and
Yeah.
and it's just an amazing, it's such a phenomenon that this movie lived as long as it lives and still continues to, and now is in its really beautiful, mature, senior citizen age, and with a lot of excitement and energy.
Yeah, you bet. Well, to the listener, it's available streaming in special edition right now on altavod.com. Vinegar Syndicate, I think, is the company who's handling it.
Vinegar Syndrome, but they won't be doing the release. There'll be an announcement probably for a second release. The thing also I wanted just to say about the VOD is that there's Cycle Kids, which is a charity group. So a portion of every VOD sale is given to them. Just a little bit of a push there for that.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well,
and Vinegar Syndrome, I think, are out, but they did a fantastic job. And there's 2 discs in there, both the 4K and the Blu-ray, and I think it'll be the same for the next group.
they're selling for big money on eBay, I see.
Yep.
So, well, anyway, so that's all the time we have for today.
Okay.
To the listener. And so for Sam Bernard, I'm Mike Carruth. Thanks so much for joining us today.